What's going on YouTube? Mike here with I Heart Knives, and in this video we're going to be sharpening the Spyderco Spydiechef courtesy of Mike from Mike Likes Knives, and it's an LC200N. So first off, I'm killing the edge on a silicon carbide stone. The stone that I'm going to be working on is the Veneve OCB bonded 240 and 400 grit, and I'm first going to hit the bevel by using Sharpie. And I do use Sharpie when I have, like, the first time I ever sharpen a knife, and this happened to be the first time with the Spydiechef. But I was talking to Nick Stasa, well, that's not his actual last name, but I'll just say that that's his last name, Stasa23. And he was telling me how in his accident, he lost his freehand sharpening muscle memory, and a way around that is to concentrate with Sharpie. And little by little, with Sharpie and relearning that muscle memory, I think he can get back to it, and just practice. The more he sharpens, the better he'll get. Relearning that muscle memory. So you can see I got the first side bevel where I wanted it, and then flip to the other side, and the second side will be a little bit easier, just because the first side your hand kind of just figures it out as you go, and then the second one kind of knows where to go, just because you've already done it with the first side. I'm just basically going back and forth with the two sides, and go back and forth until I like the edge bevel where I want it, and then I'll concentrate on working a burr from one side, and then going to the other, and flipping and going back and forth. Alright, and then after the 240 grit, I switch to the 400 grit, and go ahead and mark the bevel again, just because I want to make sure I'm hitting it when I start back over. One thing I did notice with the OCB bonded diamond, I'm fairly familiar with the Veneve diamond stones, but not so familiar with the OCB bonded diamond stones. This is a newer stone, and they cut very differently. The OCB bonded diamond stone is both more aggressive, and it also offers better feedback with pressure. So like the regular bonded diamond stones, I noticed that you get kind of, unless it's a really aggressive stone, like the 80 and 120, like those really aggressive bonded diamond stones, or if it was just freshly lapped with silicon carbide, then it cuts in a way that you get good feedback from pressure. The auditory feedback is, it's kind of shitty, but it is what it is. You'll recognize it once you get used to the stone, but it's nothing like a ceramic, or it's just a different kind of stone. It doesn't have as much of an elastic feel like the Edge Pro Matrix diamond stones. Those have like an elastic, like almost rubbery feel to them. These, they're just a touch more glassy, but you definitely know when they're cutting, and it's actually pretty easy to know when the bevel's hitting, when you're actually like hitting the bevel versus the apex. It's very clear. So just working both sides, very light pressure, and the 400 left a really nice scratch pattern. Next, we're going to go to the Kramer Zwilling 1000 grit, and LC200N is very responsive to the stones. Like the tactile feel and feedback that you get with LC200N is just a little bit different than 154 cm, but I'd say 154 cm is probably the closest that I could compare it to. It's almost like 14C28N, 154 cm had a baby, and then maybe just a little bit harder to sharpen, but it's still a fairly easy sharpening process. The nitrogen enriched steels, and they just happen to sharpen easier than most. And I find that they deburr much nicer than a lot of steels. It was very easy to apex this steel. There was no problems with that. The scratch pattern was very easy to climb grits. At the very low grit, like 240, there was some uneven scratches, but for the most part, it took really evenly. And then once I went to 400, the 400 just wiped the 240s right off, and then from there it just went really easily. I honestly probably over sharpened a little bit, just making sure that that I was deburring on the stone so that I didn't have any worries when I went to the strops. And the last stone that I finished with was the Sharpen Glass 4000, and I didn't use a Sharpie when I went to that, but I was so familiar with how it felt on the 1000, and I know the Sharpen Glass fairly well that I just kind of knew where I was going with it. But it is a good idea, especially if you're new at freehand sharpening, to use the Sharpie until you get familiar with it. But LC200N was, it's a fairly forgiving steel, so if you're sharpening LC200N, I think you'll be fine. The hardest thing about the Spydiechef is like the radius to the edge. It has a belly going the whole way, so that can be tricky, especially to new people freehand sharpening. It can actually be very difficult to hit along the whole way and not flatten or straighten your edge, because you need to roll your bevel the whole way, or you will just you'll just hit portions of the edge, and you won't hit the whole edge, and you'll end up ruining the shape of the edge and the blade. So at the 4000 grit level, it's just very, very, very light, no pressure at all, just the weight of the knife. And you can see that the polish came out really nicely off the 4000. Very clean. The bevel actually looks a little fatter in the video than it does in person. And then I started with 2 micron CBN emulsion, Ken Schwartz CBN emulsion. I was going to start at 3. You can see I have the 3 micron strap next to it, but I didn't end up using it. I just went right to the 2. after feeling it with my fingers, the burr was very minute, and I just didn't feel that that I needed to go to 3. And the 2-micron CBN from Ken Schwartz just puts a stupid polish. Very, very clean. And then after that, I went to just bare kangaroo leather, and I used the flesh side first, and then I went to the top grain after that. And that just cleans up the edge, and you know, if there's any like, you know, micro burr left that the compounded strop doesn't get off, or the stones didn't get off, that just cleans it up and cleans the apex. And I mean, it's not a necessary step, but I like to do it. And my cut test after that is paper towel. And sorry that some of the cuts are not like completely in frame. I didn't have a monitor set up, so I was just doing this blind. But you can see the cuts they're all long cuts, and they went really easily through. I mean, it was just ridiculously sharp. I was really impressed by the LC200N. And that's gonna do it, guys. So thanks for coming along. Please give the video a thumbs up if you liked it. Subscribe if you haven't yet. If you're new to the channel, welcome. And thanks again, Mike, for letting me borrow the Spydiechef. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Later.